So we've moved away from the RS 500 into something very, very different here. So this is the Targa 4S, so the 992 version. Now this is a special edition, so it's a heritage one. As you can probably tell, the colour's a bit unusual, so it's called cherry metallic. Funny enough, back actually in the garage, it looked quite brown, didn't it, Rich? But
it did, yeah.
Coming out, you can really see that cherry look. Now they've tried to go with the heritage collection that this is, for a more kind of retro, go through the ages, so really from the 50s, 60s, 70s onwards with this car. So you can get a standard or you can get an S model with the Targa. So this happens to be an S, so it's got 440 brake horsepower and a 3 litre, but it's 4-wheel drive only. So that's a bit of a talking point with people. Some people want rear-wheel drive, but as we all notice with a lot of our videos, when you're talking 400 plus brake, quite often it's actually better to be a 4-wheel drive. And the thing is, it's a very, very clever 4-wheel drive system, isn't it?
It is,
so
yeah.
It's able to sort of trick itself into behaving more like a rear-wheel drive when you want it to be, and then send power to the front axle again when need to be. So Targa, what's so special about the Targa is the roof, of course. So you've got your coupes, you've got your convertibles, but some people like the in-between. So this is pretty spectacular to watch. I'm sure people have seen it before, but I'm just going to show you. Now you can do it off the key or you can do it in the car on the move as well. So if I just press and hold a moment, and you'll see if you come round the back, I mean it's a big chunk of car that comes off it. And astonishingly, you can do this on the move up to 30 miles an hour now. So it's impressive to me just how much comes off, but then it's like having a very large sunroof. But the other thing that's lovely about it is it just looks very old school, doesn't it? Retro. And you can really see this now, it's very prominent now. So it gives people an option if they don't want to go for a coupe onto this as well. So what we're going to do, Richard and I are going to have a drive of it, and then we'll talk from the inside, let you know more about this car. Okay, so now we're sat in the 992 Targa. So one thing I didn't mention, I mean this is very anorak-y for people, but the key itself. Now Porsche have finally gone keyless. Now at this stage there isn't anywhere in particular to place the key, but you can have the colour coded to the same as the actual car itself. So you can get little wallets for it and all sorts of things, but I'll place that there for now. So being PDK, so I mean it's really simple to start. To be honest though, Porsche are one of the few, you probably can't see it from there, that don't have a start-stop button. So it still has to turn what looks like slightly like a key to fire it up. And the reason Porsche have wanted to do that is again to keep with their heritage. There's something exciting about turning the car and firing up. So they've tried to keep that tradition ultimately. So a bit later on the move, what we'll do, we'll show you the roof from the inside working. Perhaps we'll do that when we get back, shall we?
Can do.
And have a look at that going back and forth. You can see they've tried to modernise the 911 in general, more to what I suppose we're used to seeing with a lot of cars, but they've kept the rev counter very traditional, and that's all from motorsport and racing. So that's analog, everything else is digital. You can change all these displays on the side and here, but you'll see there's also still regular buttons as well, because when driving, as lovely as the touchscreen is, it can be a bit difficult when you're on the move, so this can make it a bit easier. Now this car has lots of things with it which we're going to have a little look at as we drive off. 4S. So for Richard and I, Porsche are one of our admittedly favourite brands because they're known as the everyday sports car, and straight away driving along here it proves that very, very much. So we've just got the car in its standard mode at the moment. We have a variety of modes which we'll quickly run through in a sec. So this car has something called PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management. So as I'm cruising along here right now, it's not asking a lot of the car, so it's softening the suspension. So I don't know what it's like for you, Rich, as a passenger, but for me it's very, very smooth, very
comfortable. You wouldn't know you were in a sports car.
Yeah, and the moment you get to a corner, the car will recognise that and naturally start to stiffen up that suspension, just to help with that ride and drivability through the corners. So in many respects you don't lose out, it tightens up when you need it. But we can adjust that individually, but we can also adjust it with various driving modes. But if we just start with PASM separately, now as I mentioned before, this car has a touchscreen, but it in a straight line, it's not quite as soft now as it was before, so it's tightened up. In the corners, it's able to go even tighter again, so straight away now we can feel a lot more of the road underneath us. It feels much tighter. In the corners, there's even less roll, not that there's much anyway to be fair, but even less, so the car feels even more direct. And believe it or not, you can feel that even on a road, so it's not just about track and having the car tighter for cornering there. On the road, it makes such a difference as well. So of course you can use it when it suits, but then also soften it back off. So if I just ease it back now, soften it. Another thing worth talking about is the noise. So being a bi-turbo, not a naturally aspirated anymore, we get a lot of petrol heads ask us about the noise. Does it sound as good? So at the moment I'm just cruising along, and because we're in the PDK gearbox, it's recognising that I'm cruising along in its standard mode, so it's already in 7th gear, ticking along, just trying to be fuel efficient ultimately. But in a moment I'm going to change that, but what I'm going to do is press the sports exhaust just here. Okay, so this opens up 2 valves in the exhaust system. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to play with the paddles or anything, I'm just going to do something called kick down, which is with the accelerator, so I'm just going to blip the throttle basically. So give it a blip, and straight away you'll hear that instantly. So it's got a lovely note, but you can also calm it back down with the noise when you want to. So again, depending whether you're just cruising on the motorway, you're perhaps having a chat with a friend, you don't want that noise in the background, but then when you're on a nice country road or on track, then you can enjoy it so much more. So you can see the modern technology is giving you the best of both worlds. But we've also got plenty of other modes to play with. So there's something called Sports Chrono on the car. So it gives us a little dial here, which you can probably just about see. And also on the touch display, we've got some various options here. Now there's 2 ways of doing it. I could use the touch screen, but I much prefer using something a bit more simple when driving. So I'm just going to turn this drive mode key. It's gone from normal to sport. So straight away it's actually put my sports exhaust back on now. Now I could actually quieten that down if I wanted to, but for now I'm going to leave it as it is. And it's already changed the way the gearbox is working, so it's actually changed the mapping of the gearbox. It's holding it in a lower gear for longer. It's a little bit more ready to go, but at this stage our suspension is still in normal mode, so it's pretty relaxed. So if I go just another step, so we're going to go to Sports Plus, it's dropped down another gear now. The throttle feels much sharper now when I accelerate, and it's stiffened the suspension, so we're now in sports chassis at the same time. Now what's great is we can use this all independently. You'll even notice there it's dropped down the gears earlier. So what's amazing with this gearbox is it's able to read my movements, not just with accelerating using the throttle, but also the brake pedal. So every time I brake, it's reading that, how many gears to come down, how much engine braking to give it. So now it's come down again. But if I now just calm this all back down, put it back to normal, suddenly we've dropped from 2nd, we're now in 4th gear, it's quite right down, we're going through a little village and it's peaceful and relaxing. Now there is a new mode for 992, which is wet mode. Now thankfully we don't really need to use that today. So wet mode, I don't know, Rich, do you want to jump in and talk a bit about wet mode?
Well, wet mode is quite clever because it has sensors under the wheel arches. So if it starts to jockey down rain, it will recommend you put the thing in wet mode. And essentially what it does is it dials the traction control right up. So you've got to really... the safety system on these cars is not intrusive anyway, but it really becomes a bit of more of a nanny, if you like, on a wet day. But you actually don't really notice it. I've driven these quite a lot in the wet with that system on, and you accelerate off a corner and it gives you maximum acceleration for the grip you've got. It's very clever.
Yeah, and the thing is, so I can put it in wet mode even though it's dry. Of course we wouldn't recommend this normally, but what it does, it softens the suspension even more, which can help with standing water, to cut through the water. As Richard said, the Porsche call it PSM, Porsche Stability Management, or its nickname is Please Save Me. So that basically becomes a bit more active, but only when it needs to be. So it's not intrusive. But the great thing is, again, for a regular day car, you can use this when it is chucking it down with rain, it doesn't mean you concentrate any less or rely on it anymore, but it's just working with you a little bit more. So it's amazing what this can do. Now with the Targa, this is the wide body. They all are now, aren't they, with 992, which I think is because more people wanted to go for the wide body, didn't they, originally?
Yeah.
So yes, it's got such road presence on the road, this thing, especially being the Targa. So what we'll do when we get back, we'll also show you the roof from the inside, how that works, and taking that down. But we'll leave it there for a moment, and we'll tune back in with you guys shortly.
Okay, cool. Right, so we are back at base now, and we said we would talk about the what the roof looked like from the inside. We thought we'd also talk a little bit about some of the interior bits and pieces. This is a retro car,
Yeah.
So Porsche Heritage Design. They've got 4 of these in plan. Nobody really knows what they're going to do next, I don't think, but there's going to be an 80s one, and quite know what else they've got in plan. Anyway,
Yeah.
there's a few
Well,
plans.
they've tried to go retro even before this whole heritage thing, haven't they?
Yeah,
So
well,
if
that's
you
what this
kinda-
whole Targa's about, really.
Yeah,
it looks
and
like a
even if
70s
you
car.
look here, the sunken in dash, that's very
Yeah.
retro. But you've got the merge of old and new together with the touchscreens,
Yes.
but then still buttons, and so which is great. I love that. I mean, sometimes Porsche are criticised, aren't they, for keeping so close to their roots? But
Yeah, well,
actually,
if it's not broken, don't fix it.
but also it's such a strong image, isn't
Yeah.
it?
So with this car, then obviously you've got the colours that are in this are old colours, the heritage colours, and you've got the velour, which would have sort of 60s and 70s thing. You've got green dials, which I think is I love the green dials. So the last time they did that was on the 91150 cars, 991, 91150.
Yeah, I'd forgotten all about that. And
yeah, there's the green dials in.
Yeah,
But
I
then
do
you've still
like
got the one,
that.
you've still got the paddle shifts and all that kind of stuff.
And
really.
that's a point to mention that from the drive earlier is okay. At the moment they're doing the PDK only, but apparently they will launch a 7-speed manual. But you can have at least a manual mode, can't you, with this?
You can, yeah.
Which I'm sure you'll demonstrate to
Yeah,
us
we'll have a little look at that
on
when we're
the
out and
road.
about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So should we have a look at the roof then?
Yeah, so obviously we've seen it from the outside, but it's always worth just seeing what it's like on the inside. You can now do this, we believe, on the move. Never used to
We've
be
not
able
tried
to.
it, have we? But
No, we never used to be able to with the Targa because you used to cover the rear lights.
yes.
However, I believe they've changed that, and I can see from the back that's not the case now. So up to 30 mile an hour, if the weather suddenly changes, which let's face it can happen
Yeah.
in the
We are
UK,
in the UK, yeah.
then you can adjust it. So yeah, go for it, Rich.
Okay, right.
So just basically pull and hold
Lots
that,
of noise.
and then you'll see the back coming off,
The backs fell off.
and then you'll see all of a sudden, and then in a moment this will slowly and neatly come back on.
It's quite a bit of engineering, is
Oh,
there?
it is. It very gently finishes off, doesn't it? Like very dampered
It
in
does.
the way it is. So all of a sudden now, it's just like you've got a really big, what do you call it, sunroof, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
So we'll go for a little
We'll go see what
drive,
it's like
shall
on the
we?
road. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good stuff. Okay, so here we are. So one of the things we get asked about a lot with Targa is what's it like with the roof down? Because the previous one, it could get a bit buffety, but they've worked quite hard with the sort of aerodynamics on this to try and solve that. The problem that you've got is that the air comes in and gets scooped up by the rear cowl. That's why you get the buffeting. So it is still there. It's a little bit noisier than it would be in a cab because they have really sophisticated windbreaks and things in them. But it's actually not bad at all. Good stuff.
There.
Thank you.